Hello, good evening, and welcome to Medcity's live. Today we're doing our live session on IELTS reading tips. So let's see who's joined us in this live session. Okay, so if you're watching this live, please send a hi, and at the same time, do not forget to add where you're watching from. Okay, at the same time, we're going live on Facebook, on YouTube, and Instagram. So whatever you feel comfortable watching in, whichever medium you feel is best, the medium that best suits you, you're free to use that. Anushri is watching. Shyam says hi, good evening. Prinsha, hello. Yes, so highs and good evenings coming in. So we can see that a lot of people are watching this, which is great. And if possible, do send us a comment as to where you're watching this video from. Let me just pop onto YouTube and check where our people are watching on YouTube. And I think I have hi from Jijo Joseph. Binsi Sabu says hi on YouTube. So you're free to put in questions. Today we're going to cover the topic IELTS reading, and I'm going to give as many tips as possible. And stay right here for the 1 full hour, because I'm going to solve 2 of the most challenging question types in IELTS reading. So I'm going to do it live, so together we'll solve it, and as I solve it, I'll let you know what my strategy is. Little Angel says, good evening, ma'am. That's Ramya. Okay, so these are from YouTube. Anando, hi. Jeon from South Korea, hi. Welcome to our live session. Okay, so keep your queries coming in. Show us I would say your presence by sending us messages. You can clear any maybe clarifications that you have regarding IELTS reading. So what is IELTS reading all about? Well, it is one of the tests, one of the modules in which you're tested on your language ability. It's a 1 hour long exam. And many students, very interestingly, when we get the initial inquiry regarding the IELTS test, and we tell them that there are 4 modules and one of it is reading, many students have this query: how does the reading test happen? Is it that you have to read something out aloud? So that's a common query that I get from some students. Reading test means what they consider is you're given a passage and you have to read it. And you're given your scores based on how well you read out the passage. Well guys, that is not how the IELTS reading test actually works. You are given a passage and you have to read the passage as well, but it's not reading aloud, but reading and solving the questions given. Yes, so there are different question types that you'll need to solve when you are actually doing the IELTS reading. There are difficult question types also out of these that students find quite challenging, which I said I will be solving in this live session. So before we get on to our discussion, let me show you the first question that I have with me, and just to check how many of you are very well aware of the IELTS reading test. So on screen you have the first question available. And this is your question. The question is, what is not an IELTS reading question type? Okay, now I've given you certain options: A, B, C, and D. A is multiple choice questions. B, yes, no, not given question. C, matching headings. And D, solving maps. Now go through these 4 question types, and I want you to comment which is not an IELTS reading question type out of these? Is it option A? Is it option B? Is it option C? Or is the right answer option D? Okay, we have our first message on Facebook from Anilta, and she says option D. Alright. Roshni Vinod says option D. Johnny says D. Okay. So out of these questions given on screen, which do you think is not a question type that is asked in IELTS reading? Honey says option D. Now moving on to Facebook, let's see if anyone has put in their responses. Yara says D. Shinoy John says D. This is on YouTube. Village Cinderella Vlogs, D, option D. That's great. Okay, so hi from Sri Lanka. That is Himanti Koshala. Hi Himanti. Vinita D'Souza says D. Little Angel says D. Little Angels has a question on YouTube, and her question is, could you please explain heading matching and true false not given question type? It looks like that you're quite lucky today. Okay. Alright, so moving on to the right answer as your responses keep pouring in, which is not an IELTS reading question type. Well, multiple choice question option A is definitely an IELTS reading question type. How does a multiple choice question works? Well, you will be given just like this 3 or 4 options, and the options will be given as A, B, C, D, or if it's 3 options, it will be given as A, B, C. Now reading the question, you're required to choose the right answer option. Now in most cases, you might have to select only one right answer. But sometimes a question might also ask you to choose 2 right answers. For example, if in this question I had asked, which 2 are not an IELTS reading question type, then you have an opportunity to pick up A, B, C or D and 2 out of these. But here in the sample that I have on screen, it says what is not an IELTS reading question type. So you have to pick only one right answer, A, B, C or D. And most of you have picked option D as the right answer. Now this same question is the very example of a multiple choice question in IELTS reading. Now, so answer option A will not be the right answer because multiple choice questions do appear in IELTS reading. Looking at option B, it says yes, no, not given. Well, again, yes, no, not given and true, false, not given is one of the question types which most students have a problem in finding the answer. So, like our viewer on YouTube has put up a comment saying she needs to know how to solve a yes, no, not given question type. Stay tuned because I'm going to choose that particular question type and show you how we can solve it. So, A and B are not the right answers. Looking at option C, it says matching headings. And again, matching headings is definitely an IELTS reading question type. And that is another question type that I will be solving in this session today because many students have said that that's quite problematic. They find it challenging to solve a matching the heading question type. So the right answer for this question is option D. Solving maps is not an IELTS reading question type. Well, solving maps is a question type that appears in the IELTS listening and not the IELTS reading. So, majority of you have answered as option D and that is perfectly right. Solving maps is not an IELTS reading question type. Well, that's great. And like I said, most of you have already given us the right answer options. Now, the next question is, now I've told you what are the major question types that you have in IELTS reading. Of course, other than these, the 3 that I said definitely appear in the IELTS reading, like the multiple choice questions, yes, no, not given question, and matching the headings. You also have another question type when it comes to IELTS reading, which is completion tasks. And completion tasks simply means fill in the blanks. So you have certain blanks given and you have to fill in the right answers using, of course, the based on the instructions given to you, as in whether you should be filling in 1 word, 2 words or 3 words as your answer. So completion task is another question type in IELTS reading. Well, now because our entire session today is on reading tips and how you can actually solve IELTS reading, I'm going to show you what are the top tips that will really help you when it comes to solving the reading test. Okay, so on screen I'm sharing certain tips that I have and that will definitely help you when it comes to the reading test of IELTS. Okay, so what are the top tips? Let's have a look at the screen. Tip number 1 says strategy for each question. It simply means that you need to be aware of what strategy to apply in each of the question types. Now the strategy you use for a fill in the blanks is not the same that you're going to apply in a yes, no, not given question type, or for that matter even a matching the heading question type. So make sure you're very clear about the different question types that happen in IELTS reading, and at the same time you know what the strategies are. And one of the most important strategies that you need to keep in mind is that you need to read the instructions carefully. Because in case of a fill in the blanks question type, where you have to complete a table, maybe you have to complete a summary, you get instructions like write 1 word only, or write 2 words, or write up to 3 words. Now if you're not really sure of the instructions, you might mess up your responses. Let's say you have an instruction that says write 1 word only as the answer, and you might write a bag of rice. A bag of rice is basically 4 words. Now the instructions clearly tells you you need to write 1 word only. How do you think that answer can be written instead of saying a bag of rice, which is basically 4 words? Maybe I can say it as rice bag. Now it could be a hyphenated word, in which case it would be a single word as well. So it completely depends on what is given in the passage, because when it comes to reading, you don't have to change anything. All you need to do is you will simply have to read the passage, pick the right answer and fill in the blanks, or write the response as required. So tip number 1 is make sure you know the strategy for each of these questions. So what is tip number 2? Ensure that you have sufficient practice. Now, how do you get sufficient practice? Well, the easiest method is to ensure that you take up a lot of different IELTS reading samples, passages, questions, test papers. If you get hold of previous test papers, well and good, and try solving all of them. In the IELTS reading, you have 40 questions to solve and you have 1 hour's time. These 40 questions are divided into 3 sections. So you're going to read 3 different passages, or you're going to read text in 3 different sections, and you will answer a total of 40 questions. Now, that takes me to the 3rd tip, management of time. Many students find it challenging as to how do I manage time? Maybe I just solve 30 questions and by then 1 hour is up. I have 10 more questions remaining. What do I do? Well, of course, it's very important that you practice paying attention to time right from day 1. Now, what happens to certain students is that they take all the extra time because they focus on accuracy and they feel that finding the right answer is more important than managing time. And they might solve all the 40 questions in 1.5 hours or 2 hours time. Or they might also take breaks in between. Let's say they solve section 1 of reading, which is the first passage, and they take a long break. They take a tea break, they go around with friends, they come back and then try solving passage 2. Now, if you take up this method of studying, the biggest disadvantage is that you will never be able to manage your time. And for that, you need to ensure that you practice time management. How do you do that? Every time you're taking up a reading practice material, make sure you have 1 hour's time aside. No disturbances in between. If you have a younger sibling who would, run into your room and probably take things from your room, make it a point to instruct your sibling not to enter the room while you're practicing. If possible, you can stay in a very secluded place, maybe lock your room for that 1 hour so that you can focus completely on the paper and solve all the 40 questions at one go. One strategy that you can use in managing time is that you give 15 minutes per section. So 15 minutes for section 1, 15 minutes for section 2, another 15 minutes for section 3, which means in the first 45 minutes, you should try and solve all the 3 different passages, try and solve all the 40 questions. Now, that might be challenging initially. What you need to do is be very strict about yourself, be very stern when it comes to managing time. If you don't get an answer to a question, do not waste your time thinking of, why am I not getting the answer? Let me read the passage again. Oh, it must be this. Is it really the answer? So don't waste your time speculating over an answer that you're not sure of. Instead, leave a blank there. Go to the next question. Keep solving the questions that you're very clear of. Okay? So any question that you're not sure about, that you have a confusion, that you need more time to solve, just make a mark on the question booklet and keep progressing to the remaining questions. If you follow this, in 15 minutes you will be able to solve each of the 3 sections, and in the remaining 15 minutes that will take you to the 1 hour, you can go back to the questions that you were not able to solve and try and solve them. Now, the advantage of using this method is you're not stuck at a particular question. Now, sometimes there would be easier questions in the remaining passages. You would never reach those easier questions because you're stuck in section 1, which means you've lost out your chance to get a good score in your IELTS reading. But if you follow this trick that I just told you, that try and complete all of the questions and then come back, if there are easy questions and short questions, you will be able to easily solve them, and then you have all the time in the world, which is 15 minutes of course, to come back and try and solve the questions that you were not able to solve. So, as per tip number 3, manage time, I would definitely say it's important that you're very stern, you're very strict about your own time management. And the earlier you begin practicing with the time, the better you become towards the end. And on the test day, you would have mastered the trick of managing time. And the last tip for sorting or solving IELTS reading is make sure you enroll in a discussion class if possible. Now, what is the benefit of a discussion class? The benefit is, now you might have a method or a strategy or a particular mode in which you try and solve a particular question. Now, when you enroll in a discussion class where you have other students or you have an expert trainer to guide you, they might be able to throw insight onto any other methods that are available. Maybe a new strategy, a new approach. So, when you get introduced to a new strategy or a new approach, what happens is maybe you find that new approach is so much easier than the one you've been following. Isn't that just being lucky? Because before the exam, with the help of your friends or a discussion group, you are able to exchange your ideas, exchange your strategies, exchange approaches, and find out which is the one that most suits you or which is the one that is easiest to reach the right answer. So, try and follow all of these 4 tips, and I'm sure that you will be able to do brilliantly well when it comes to IELTS reading. So, these are the top tips for helping you prepare with IELTS reading. Now, It seems like there aren't a lot of questions coming up. Probably many of you find IELTS reading quite easy. Now, you guys must be really lucky if you feel IELTS reading is easy, because there are a lot of students out there who still feel that it is challenging and they're unable to find the right answers. Well, not to worry. If at all, I think there was just one question that Angel had asked regarding explaining the strategy for matching heading and solving true or false not given question type. So these are the two questions definitely I'll be trying and sorting in this session, in this 1 hour session that we have today. Now, if any of you are looking out for help to prepare for the IELTS, maybe you're doing preparation completely on your own, it's probable that you're taking the help of a friend of yours. Maybe one of your friends have recently cleared the IELTS and you think that you might take help from them and try and clear your test. Now, you might be someone who's enrolled in an institute and learning from them, or you've enrolled with an online trainer. But if you're looking for any additional support, then we have a solution for you. It's called as Medcity IELTS app. Now, this is a very interesting app for those who haven't really tried it out. This might be your chance to try out what the IELTS app is all about. Well, it's an app which has videos completely done in English, which means no matter which part of the world you are, using the app from, or whatever, nationality you belong to, you will be able to follow the app and the video lessons. And in this app of ours, you have over 50 hours, 50. You have over 50 hours of video lessons covering all the 4 modules, and you also have additional videos on IELTS related grammar classes. And you have a section called as podcasts, which will take you to extra listening practice materials so that you can get acquainted to all the different accents possible in the IELTS listening. You have a section completely dedicated to practice materials, where you'll be able to take up reading and listening practice materials and try out an entire test. You also have question banks on IELTS writing and IELTS speaking. Now, another interesting part of the IELTS app is that you have mock speaking video lessons. Now, you get a chance to see how an examiner asks a possible set of questions to a student, how the student responds, and at the end of the mock speaking video, you also have a detailed feedback session that will help you understand what are the areas that the candidate has made mistakes in, what are the areas that needs improvement, what are the things you need to keep in mind when it comes to IELTS speaking. And you also have detailed strategy lessons on IELTS writing. Whether you are preparing for general training IELTS or academic IELTS, you have video lessons for all of it, with sample essays, sample letters, and sample report writing. Isn't that just great? Well, trust me, it's an awesome app, and it's available both on Android and the iOS version, and it's free. You have a lot of free videos that you can access, and if you're happy with the free videos and materials, all you need to do is make a small payment, which is roughly around 501 rupees, and you get access for 1 full year. You have access to more detailed videos if you make that small payment. So try out Medcity IELTS app, and if you find it interesting, do let us know how you're doing with it and what your feedback or take on the app is. Having introduced you to the IELTS app, without much ado, I'm going to take you to the first and the most challenging question type, which is a yes-no not given question type or a true-false not given question type. Now, both of these, you need to apply the same strategy, but of course, there are small differences, I would say. A yes, no, not given basically asks you to check the writer's claims, the writer's opinions, the writer's let's say take on a particular topic. But if it's true, false, not given, it basically tests how relevant the facts are. Okay, so how correct the facts are that is given in the passage when you match it to the question statement. So on screen, you can see two questions, question 32 and 33. I have picked out these questions from one of the IELTS reading passages. So, what is the strategy that you have to follow? The question type is yes, no, not given. Now, you can also see at the bottom that there is a part of the reading passage. This is paragraph D, which simply means a yes, no, not given question type. The answer is given in this particular example in paragraph D. Paragraph A, B and C does not have the answers. So, the first strategy that will really help you when it comes to solving a yes, no, not given question type is that the answers most often come in the same order. Which means you'll always be able to find the answer to question 32 first, and then you will go to question number 33. It's always, almost all the time in the same order. Now, how do you solve this particular question type? Well, first of all, make sure you read the statement given to you. Let us look at statement 32. Okay, it says helium chooses to be on its own. Now, what you can do with a sentence given like this is probably divide the sentence into 2 or 3 parts. That is, identifying key phrases, key words or key terms. For instance, helium is a key word, and what we can understand is the entire passage is about helium. Okay, so helium is a key word. So I underline helium, and then I underline chooses and on its own, be on its own. So I have divided this first statement into 3 parts. Helium chooses, be on its own. Why did I underline, or why did I divide the statement into 3 parts? 3 or 2 parts, it's up to you. Now, I'm going to try and match these 3 or 2 parts that I've underlined to the passage and try and find out if the statement that is given, statement number 32, matches with the idea given in the passage. If it matches, the answer is a yes. If it doesn't match, as in there is a contradictory or an opposite idea presented, it becomes a no. But if there is no mention about that particular statement or idea, then it becomes a not given. So that's how you identify yes, no and not given. Okay, so now let's start quickly skimming through the passage. The possibility of losing helium forever poses the threat of a real crisis, if not impossible to duplicate, close to approaching the point of feasibility for helium, even as similar developments continue apace. Helium is even cheerfully derided as a loner element. Now, loner. Now, this strikes a chord. You've read a statement that says helium chooses to be on its own. On its own means alone. And here you have a word like loner that could be connected to that statement. So it says helium is cheerfully derided as a loner element. So we have helium mentioned in the passage, so we can tick helium. Loner means be alone, be on its own, which means I can tick the third part also. Now I have to find out if the word chooses, if that idea about choosing to be alone is also given in the passage. So I read the remaining sentence and it says, it does not adhere to other molecules like its cousin hydrogen. Not adhere means not stick to or not go along with. What do you mean by not stick to? That means it is something that I am doing on purpose. Is it that hydrogen is not adhering to me? No. Helium does not adhere to hydrogen, and not hydrogen does not adhere to helium, which means helium has a choice. Helium has an option. It does not want to stick to hydrogen. Doesn't that mean helium chooses to be on its own? So you can see I've divided that. Yeah, so Roshni Vinod has added it does not adhere to other molecules. So the answer is yes. Excellent, Roshni. So here I've divided the statement into 3 parts, and I've been able to match all the 3 parts to the passage, which means this idea is given in the passage, and your answer for question number 32 is yes. Let's try and use the same strategy. Let me just change the color if possible. 1 second. Okay, I'm not able to see the color. Alright, okay. So look at question 33. It says helium is a very cold substance. So here I've divided statement 33 into 2 parts. One is helium, and the other is very cold substance. Now I've told you that the answers come in the order, which means the answer for 33 can never be above this. It has to always be below this section. So let's continue reading. We have to look for some idea that conveys that it's a cold substance. Now remember, the answer could be yes, which means the idea is given. It could be no, which means it's a contradictory or opposite idea, or sometimes it could also be not given. There's no mention of it. So let's find out. So I continue reading, and I say it says, according to Dr. Lee, helium is the most notable gases, non-reactive. It has closed electronic configuration, tightly bound atom, own electrons, combination with other elements. Another important attribute is helium's unique boiling point. Now when I reach boiling point, I'm stuck here because there is a possibility that it could be connected to helium being a very cold substance. So let's find out. It says helium's unique boiling point, which is lower than that of any other element. Now boiling point is lower than other elements. So is there a mention of helium being a cold substance? All we know is that the boiling point is lower, but we are not sure whether the substance is cold. So rightly, like how Roshni Vinod has added or like Reba has added, the answer is not given. So though there is a mention of helium, there is no mention of it being a very cold substance. So that second half, which we have underlined, is not given at all. Now many of you might confuse that unique boiling point and boiling point being lower than other element as being a cold substance, but we just know that the boiling point is lower. We don't know, or we don't have any idea whether helium is a cold substance or not. So the answer, my dear friends, is not given. So I'm going to show you another question, and this time I want you guys to try and solve question number 34 on your own. I'll help you, of course. Okay, 34 says, high-tech industries in Asia use more helium than laboratories and manufacturers in other parts of the world. So what is our first step? The step to solving this particular question type. Step number 1. Okay. Oh, so we have a lot more people who've joined us on YouTube. Vinita D'Souza watching from Kuwait. Shelu Tipu watching from Bangladesh. Himanti watching from Sri Lanka. All right, good evening. That's great. Okay, so Ron, oh, there are people answering on YouTube as well. That's wonderful. Okay, so try and solve question number 34. It says high-tech industries in Asia. So let's underline that as a keyword, high-tech industries in Asia. Which other part do you think is important? Use helium. Okay, use more helium than laboratories and manufacturers, other parts of the world. So this is one, which is high-tech industries in Asia. More helium than laboratories and manufacturers of where? Present in other parts of the world. Okay, so I want you to go through the passage and tell me what is the answer for question number 34. You have to try and locate high-tech industries in Asia. So I've just taken a part of that passage, and if you see, it says dwindling supplies resulted in postponement of research and development projects in physics laboratories and manufacturing plants. So we have a mention of laboratories and manufacturing plants, okay, but where are these laboratories and manufacturing plants are not clearly mentioned. But let's try completing that sentence. Okay, it says around the world, so we know it's in the other parts of the world, fine. And it says there is an enormous supply and demand imbalance partly brought about by the expansion of high-tech manufacturing in Asia. So we have the keywords high-tech manufacturing in Asia. We have laboratories and manufacturers in other parts of the world. But do we have a mention of these high-tech industries, using more helium? What is the answer? Do you think the answer is yes? Do you think the answer is no? Or do you think the answer is not given? Question number 34. There is an enormous supply and demand imbalance partly brought about by the expansion of high-tech manufacturing in Asia. What is your answer to question number 34? Do you think it is yes? Do you think it is no? Or do you think the answer is not given? Let's see what the responses are. So Jijo Joseph says not given. Oh, Akin says watching from Kerala. Hi Akin on YouTube. Okay. Shinoy John on YouTube says not given. Okay. Ronnie Kuruvilal says not given. Okay. Akin says the answer is yes. Alright. What are my friends on Facebook responding as? Let's see. Oh, they get to solve. Okay. Can you tell me what the answer to question number 34 is? Whether it should be yes, should it be no, or is it not given? Now remember, you have to focus. It says there is an enormous supply and demand imbalance partly brought about by expansion of high-tech industries. Does it mean that it is using more helium? Partly brought about by. So it's not fully. Okay, so Nikita Shrikant on Facebook says not given. Sunita Ranjit says not given. Partly brought about. And it also says by the expansion. So it's partly, and we're not really sure if they actually use more helium. So the right answer is not given. Okay, statement number 34 is not clearly given. Well, that's getting interesting. So let's try and solve one last question type, that is 35. And by then I hope you'll be clear with what is the strategy that you need to apply for a yes, no, not given or a true, false, not given question type. Okay, so what does statement 35 say? It says the US Congress, so let's underline the US Congress, understood, that's another part, possible consequences of the HPA. Okay. 35. US Congress understood possible consequences of the HPA. Now quickly when you skim it, you can see HPA given here. What is HPA? Helium Privatization Act. So we start reading from this part. It says an American law in 1996 that requires the US National Helium Reserve to liquidate its helium assets by 2015 regardless of the market price. Although intended to settle the original cost of the reserve by a US Congress ignorant of its ramifications. Oh, we have US Congress here, we have HPA here, and it says the original cost of the reserve by a US Congress ignorant of its ramifications. What is ramifications? Any idea? What do you think ramifications is? Now, this is another challenge that you might face when solving an IELTS reading. You might come across a not so very familiar word and you might be stuck. I don't know what ramifications is. How do I solve it? Well, relax. You just need to read around it and try and figure. Ignorant, is it a positive or a negative word? Ignorant, not aware of, so it's not positive, okay? Ramifications, of its ramifications. The result of this first sale is that global helium prices are so artificially whatever. So ramifications basically mean maybe consequences or after effects. The result, that's what ramification is. So now can you tell me what the answer is? Statement 35, is it yes, is it no, or is it not given? US Congress is ignorant of ramifications, which means they are not aware of the consequences, not aware of the result, possibilities, the outcome. So US Congress is given, possible consequences is given, but they didn't understand the possible consequences. They are ignorant. So the answer to statement number 35 is no. That's right, Nikita Shrikant. You've said no, and the answer is no. Roshni has said 35 no. Roshni Mary Matthew has 35 says no. That's good. So this is basically how you can solve a yes, no, not given or a true, false, not given question type. So on YouTube, K. Pulikan has said no. Pramila Vasam says not given. Mig Notorious says no. So Pramila Vasam, it will not be not given because it already says the US Congress is ignorant. But in the statement it says understood, which means opposite idea. Okay? Not given is when the information is not mentioned at all. Shinoy John says no. That's great. So yes, this is a strategy that will help you to solve a yes, no, not given or a true, false, not given question type. All you need to do is step number 1, divide the statement into 2 or 3 parts. Step number 2, identify where the first statement appears, which paragraph of the passage. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Now here, the answer we found in paragraph D, which is A, B, C, so the 4th paragraph. So the answer begins from paragraph 4 and the answers most often come in the order. So if you're able to trace where 33 is, then 34 has to be below that. Then followed by 34, then 35. So this will help you. Now let's say you're not able to find out the answer for 35. You just need to leave that and go to the next one, 36. Okay, whatever that question type is. But you can always come back and read between 34 and 36 to find out what the answer is for question number 35. So I hope that this small exercise that we've done has helped you identify an important strategy when it comes to solving a yes, no, not given or a true, false, not given question type. Now on demand, now we had one of our viewers on YouTube asking for another question type. What did she ask for? Well, she had asked for a different question types to be sorted, to be solved, and that is nothing else but a matching question type. So I'm going to show you that as well. So on screen we have a matching the heading question type. And most often students vote for matching the heading and yes, no, not given as a challenging question type. Okay, so can you see it on screen, the matching headings? Now how does it happen? How does it happen? It happens as a list of headings. Now here you have list of headings from 1 it goes all the way up to 9. So you have 9 headings given. And we're going to just try and solve question number 27, 28, and here 29 is already solved. Now 29 is the answer for paragraph C, and it is already solved. It is given as 9. The answer is given as 9. So step number 1 when solving or matching the heading question is always look if a sample or an example has been solved or given. In this case, we have a sample given for paragraph C, and the answer is given as Roman number 9. So step number 1 is always strike out which is already solved. We don't have to consider that heading at all. So that leaves us with 8 headings from 1 to 8, and we are going to try and solve the heading for paragraph A and paragraph B. So remember, step number 1 is strike out from the list of headings anything that has already been solved. Okay, now let's look at the first paragraph, paragraph A. How do you match the heading? Now, one good method would be to first read the list of headings once. So let's go through the list of headings. Heading 1 says robots working together. 2 says preparing LGVs for takeover. 3, looking ahead. 4, the LGV's main functions. 5, split location for newspaper production. 6, newspapers superseded by technology. 7, getting the newspaper to the printing center. And 8 is controlling the robots. Okay, so once we've already gone through the list of headings, step number 2, read the first 2 sentences given in the first paragraph. So paragraph A, let's read the first 2 sentences. So we begin from here. It says, the newspaper production process has come a long way from the old days when the paper was written, edited, typeset and ultimately printed in one building. So how does it begin? In the past, it was done in one building, which means it's going to talk about the present. These days, can you see? So there is a comparison here. In the past, everything about newspaper was done in a single building. But these days, the editor, sub-editor, journalists who put the paper together are likely to find themselves in totally different buildings or maybe even in different cities. So we read the first 2 sentences, and you can just go through the last sentence as well. Now technically here we have very few sentences, which means when we read the first 2 sentences and the last sentence, probably we are reading the entire paragraph. But look at this. It says the daily paper is compiled at the editorial headquarters known as the pre-press center, heart of the city, printed far away in the suburbs. Here human beings are in the minority as much of the work is done by automated machines. So what does it say? It speaks about how different aspects of the newspaper printing happens in different parts, right? So do you remember reading a heading like that? Was it 1? No, robots working together, preparing LGVs for takeover, looking ahead, LGV's main functions. 5, it says split location for newspaper production. So split location, that means people working in different designations in a newspaper are from different parts. They need not be in one building. What does that mean? It means the right heading for paragraph A is 5. So this is the answer for paragraph A. What was the strategy we followed? Always cross out the sample that's been done. What do you do next? Then you read the list of headings once, and when you look at each paragraph, read the first 2 sentences and just the last sentence as well. And because you've already read the list of headings once, you would find an idea similar, and you can always go back to the list and try and match. So here we've matched heading number 5 to paragraph A. Now that you have understood the strategy, I have one question that you can try and solve. What is that? Paragraph B. So because we've already found the answer to paragraph A, I've struck out heading 5 and heading 9 is already solved. So I want you to read the first 2 sentences and probably just the last sentence of paragraph B. Okay? And I want you to tell me which is the right heading. Now, what does the first sentence say in paragraph B? It says, once the finished newspaper has been created for the next morning's edition, all the pages are transmitted electronically from the pre-press center to the printing center. System of transmission is an updated, unsophisticated page facsimile system which is in use in many other newspapers. And the last sentences. The pages are then processed into photographic negatives and the film is used to produce aluminum printing plates ready for the presses. Okay? The pages are then processed. Now it began with saying how the pages are transmitted and then it goes on to say the pages are then processed. So let's just quickly read through the one sentence that is in between. It says, an image setter at the printing center delivers the pages as films. Each page takes less than a minute to produce, although for color pages, 4 versions, ones each for black, cyan, magenta and yellow are sent. Okay, so it talks about the process, okay, of how the newspaper is set, how the pages are set. So can you tell me what the right answer is? Which list of heading is the right answer? Anyone out there? Any guesses? Is there any mention of robots working? No, we don't have. What about a mention of LGVs? No. So there's no mention of LGV here, so we can basically exclude 2 and also a 4, which again speaks about LGV's main functions. What about looking ahead? Is it talking about something regarding looking ahead, about the future? No. Okay, again there is no mention of robots, so it's not 8. Controlling the robots is not mentioned. So we are remaining with 2 options. One is 6 and the other is 7. 6 says newspapers superseded by technology or getting the newspaper to the printing center. Okay, so Roshni Mary Matthew says 6. Benny Sunu Benny says 6. Anyone else? What do you think is the right answer option? We have basically excluded or eliminated certain responses and we are left with just 2 options, that is 6 and 7. Out of these, which do you think is the right answer? Is it 6 or is it 7? Pramila Vasam says 7. Archana Sijin on YouTube says 7. Okay. Let's see what people on Facebook say. Yeah, we just have responses saying 6. Roshni Vinod says 7. Okay. So heading 6 says newspaper superseded by technology. 7 says getting the newspaper to the printing center. Now Rensi Saji says 7. Sunita Ranjit says 7. Now, dear friends, is there any mention of the printing center here? Now, the first sentence says about finished newspaper created for the next morning. All pages are transmitted electronically. Yeah, so we have from the pre-press center to the printing center, yes, but look at the last sentence. It says the pages are then processed into photographic negatives and the film is used to produce aluminum printing plates ready for the presses. So the first line basically summarizes of the thing reaching the center, but we've only reached that part where we're talking about getting the aluminum printing pages ready for the presses. If you read the entire paragraph, that is the last sentence as well. So do you think the answer is newspaper superseded by technology, or is it option 7, getting the newspaper to the printing center? Okay, well, the right answer for this particular paragraph, which is paragraph B, is heading number 6. That is newspapers superseded by technology. Why? Now you might be confused as to, isn't it about to the printing center? But look, only the first sentence says, it basically says all the pages are transmitted electronically and then sent to the printing center. But there's a detailed description of the system of transmission, and if you look at the last sentence, you can see it's talking about a process and the process is not complete. Which means there are different ideas conveyed in the entire passage and not just what is given in the first sentence. Prinsha says 7. The right answer here is 6. Newspapers superseded by technology. Okay? Well, so the idea is always read the first 2 sentences of a paragraph, then read the last sentence as well. If you feel that there is another idea being mentioned in that last sentence, make it a point to go through the entire paragraph. But just skim, you don't have to read every word. You're quickly just going through the keywords. And as you go through the keywords, a technique that really helps you if you're confused is an elimination technique. So here we've zeroed in on 2 headings, and out of the 2 you have to choose just one right answer. So you can eliminate the wrong ones and then decide out of the 1 or 2 options that you have which will be the right answer. So this is another technique that you can use when solving matching the heading question type. Now on YouTube as well, many have answered as 6 and 7. Like I'll say majority, half and half. 50% have answered as 6 and the other 50 says 7. Now that exactly, my friends, would be your point of confusion. Which takes me to the top tips that I've already shared in the beginning of the session, that is, practice as much as possible and ensure that you take part in discussion classes. So if you're interested in taking up IELTS sessions with us, you can enroll for a course online. If it's an online course, you can attend our training from any part of the world, or if you are somewhere close to one of our 16 branches, or if you would be able to travel to one of our branches, like we have students, we're basically located in Kerala and we have a center in Karnataka as well. But it's great to know that we have students traveling all the way from the northern parts or the eastern parts of India, coming all the way to our centers here. So if you would like to come for a regular class, you're welcome to any of our branches for detailed sessions on IELTS, or you can also take up an online IELTS session. So these are the tips that will help you solve an IELTS reading passage. I've just discussed 2 different question types here. We have various other question types as well when it comes to IELTS reading. For those strategies, all you need to do is download Medcity IELTS app and have a look at our video lessons. So I'd like to thank each one of you who have joined us in our live session, both on Facebook and YouTube, and of course we also have our viewers on Instagram. Thank you so much for joining us on live, and see you on our next live session next week. Thank you.